Welcome back. Thailand's crisis in focus today. The leaders of anti-government protests in Bangkok have surrendered and pleaded with their angry supporters to stand down after army troops launched an aggressive push to take over their encampment in the Thai capital. The crackdown in Bangkok Wednesday came after nearly 9 weeks of tension, during which at least 67 people were killed in clashes between the red shirts and troops. The Reds, as they're known, first moved into the capital to press demands that new elections be held to replace the current government, which they denounced as undemocratic. Wednesday's army crackdown marks a bloody climax to the 2-month standoff, and even though red shirt leaders have surrendered, resistance seems to continue elsewhere. In a moment, we'll be hearing the viewpoint of Southeast Asia specialist David Cameron. But first, Oliver Farry has a roundup of the events of the last 24 hours in Bangkok.
The fires burn on after night falls on Bangkok. It follows a day of a furious crackdown by armed forces on the red shirt protesters' compound. The orders given to the troops was shoot on sight. Hundreds of soldiers and dozens of armoured vehicles stormed the Red Bastion in the centre of the city. Despite the surrender of several key protest leaders, pockets of resistance held out. The red shirts lit tyres and fired homemade rockets and grenades against the military. Troops responded with tear gas and automatic rifles. The protesters then set fire to the stock exchange and the offices of a television station. Employees of the station were later rescued unharmed. The huge Central World shopping centre was also destroyed by fires, but the Thai government say they have the situation mostly under control.
Although our security operation in Ratchaprasong and in Lumpini Park has been progressive, the areas are now stable. We are still facing with a few pockets of trouble in several places in Bangkok.
Several people are reported dead, including an Italian photojournalist, and dozens others are wounded. Troops rounded up dozens of protesters as they tightened their grip on the rebel zone. Trouble also spread to the provinces, where the town hall was set alight in the town of Ubon Thani. Deposed Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, speaking on Thai radio from an undisclosed location abroad, warned the government action could backfire.
There is a theory saying a military crackdown can spread resentment, and that these resentful people will become guerrillas.
But now Prime Minister Abhisit Vejjajiva has imposed a curfew from 8 p.m, and the army said it intended to continue its operations. Authorities say soldiers will shoot arsonists and looters.
Well, Thailand in focus tonight, and we're speaking to David Cameron, who's research fellow and Southeast Asia specialist at Paris' Sciences Po University. Thank you very much for being with us on France 24. Would you say that the red shirts have been defeated today?
Not at all, no. I mean, the problem is that there may be some political resolution. But there's a process of reconciliation that has to come into play. And the social crisis that underlies all this hasn't been dealt with. The incredible inequalities exist in Thailand. And the structural problem, I mean, where the whole questioning of the constitutional monarchy has not been resolved either. So this is the end of the beginning, but it's the beginning also of another end.
Well, the crackdown in Bangkok that we saw, the bloody crackdown, was certainly what many people feared. Could there have been another solution to this crisis?
The government was divided. I mean, for 9 weeks, the red shirts and the government and the military have been powerful enough to maintain a stalemate, but neither side has been strong enough to impose a solution. And the government has been divided over the position they should take, as were the military. I mean, there are military who are sympathetic to the red shirts, what we call the so-called watermelon officers, who are red in the inside and green on the outside. And Abhisit, the Prime Minister, did hesitate about using force for some period. So I don't think there were other solutions. I mean, the government's position was to isolate the more radical elements, who are now wear black, from the more moderates amongst the red shirts. But in fact, has led to a cycle of violence which has really got out of control.
So, who is to blame then for the failure of negotiations? Because there was an attempt to negotiate between the red shirts and the government in recent days. Who is to blame, you think, for that failure?
I think all sides are to blame. I mean, Thaksin probably intervened to stall a negotiated settlement because he wants to be able to return with an amnesty. So that was one of the factors that came into play. There were also hardliners in the government and in the military who thought that Abhisit was giving away too much. And of course, pushing the elections to November was the purpose was to make sure the military promotions, which are very important, occur in August, September, occur prior to the elections. And also the yellow shirts, the so-called supporters of the government or the monarchy are to blame because they started this whole cycle. It begins with the coup d'etat of 2006 that gets rid of a popularly elected Prime Minister, Thaksin Shinawatra. Right. He may have been corrupt, he may be other things, but and so it begins with the occupation of the airport by the yellow shirts showed that this kind of demonstration would go unanswered.
Well, you mentioned Thaksin, the former Prime Minister, who the red shirts support. Obviously, he seems to have had a big role in this crisis and still has, in fact. Did he fund the red shirts, as many people say?
He's funded partly the red shirts, but there's also a lot of evidence that the red shirts are being financed by their families, by support from the northern provinces. This is a social crisis as well. I mean, the north of Thailand, you must understand, is 9 times poorer than the Bangkok area. What Thaksin did when he was elected, the first time you had a prime minister since the end of the absolute monarchy in 1932, who seemed to care a little bit about the poor. Demagogically, each village was given 1 million baht. But for the first time, the people felt a little bit empowered in those. And they've seen that their democratic and social aspirations have been thwarted.
What consequences do you think the crackdown will have? I mean, isn't there a risk that there could be a radicalization of the red shirt movement?
Well, we've already seen tonight that although the area in the central Bangkok has been cleared, there are spontaneous activities elsewhere in Bangkok. There's now violence spreading to the north of Thailand. It didn't occur before. So the situation has not really been, a battle has been won, so to speak, by the government. But if you like, the war for some kind of reconciliation has not been won.
But is the Thai government still legitimate in the eyes of the population after this crackdown?
The government was never legitimate. The government came to power through a kind of parliamentary maneuver. Thaksin was overthrown by a military coup. 2 following governments from his own party movement were pushed aside in rather dubious circumstances. So it's not a victory for democracy on any side, and the government still remains illegitimate and perhaps even more legitimate in the eyes of the red shirts.
Yeah, well, when demonstrations began in Bangkok in March, the red shirts were demanding that the current prime minister, step down and hold new elections. But it seems that the movement has splintered in recent weeks, and the ultimate aims have become unclear. Do you have that feeling as well?
There are certain, on both sides, of people who just wanted, jusqu'au boutiste, people who wanted to really go to, the hardliners on both sides. What has happened and what is really significant is that the monarchy is now in question.
Right. Well, that was going to be my other question. The king has been very silent throughout this crisis. Do you think he could have prevented an escalation of the crisis?
The king in previous crises in 1973, 1992 intervened as the kind of a neutral referee, the father of the nation. But that's the problem. The monarchy is now in question.
Why didn't he intervene in this crisis?
Well, he may have been incapable. He's 82. He's been in hospital since September. This is the end of a reign. Well, let's face it, he's dying. And so physically he may not have been able to intervene, but he's no longer considered by parts of the population as being the neutral referee that he was previously.
All right. Thank you very much, David Cameron, for your insight. David Cameron, Southeast Asia Specialist at Paris Sciences Po University, talking to us, of course, about the political situation in Thailand. That's the focus on France 24. More news coming up very shortly. I hope you do stay with us.
With France 24, get at the heart of international current affairs live on your iPad. The France 24 app is an information platform in 3 languages. It's innovative, free and simple to install. Thanks to this revolutionary geolocation tool, you'll never miss what's going on in your region. Make the most of our original content with Phosphate Video on Demand. All the stories, reports, debates and interviews. With Phosphate on the iPad, get all the international news whenever and wherever you want.